Welcome to my presentation about distracted driving, the problem and the solutions. In this presentation, I'm going to be discussing the phenomenon of distracted driving and the solutions that I feel need to be implemented in order to rectify this issue. I'm going to briefly be discussing the statistics of distracted driving, and then I'm going to propose solutions and then rebut some of the counter arguments that have been made by people in regard to this issue. So let's get started. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, estimates that every day in the United States, there are 9 deaths and over 1,000 injuries as a result of crashes involving a distracted driver. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, estimates that distracted driving claimed 3,477 lives in 2015, an estimate which is probably very conservative, as it is often difficult to definitively prove that someone was distracted while driving. An article from Edgar Snyder and Associates estimates that 660,000 drivers attempt to use their phones while driving at any given point during daylight hours, and that 1 in every 4 car accidents in the United States is caused by texting and driving. Many studies indicate that the minimum amount of time that a driver's attention gets taken away from the road while sending a text is generally 5 seconds. At a speed of just 55 miles per hour, that is equivalent to driving the length of an entire American football field. Motor vehicle deaths are on the rise in this country. In 2017, according to the National Safety Council, NSC, there were 40,100 motor vehicle deaths, down 1% from 2016, but up 6% from the 2015 figure. The 2015 figure was 7% higher than the 2014 figure, indicating an alarming uptick in motor vehicle deaths nationwide, much of which is likely due to cellular phone usage and wider means of distracted driving, NSC, which I didn't need to add because that's just an in-text citation, but moving on. Although distracted driving can refer to any activity that diverts attention from driving, including eating, drinking, and even speaking to others, texting is the most alarming distraction, with texting while driving estimated to increase the risk of a crash among young drivers by 23 times. All of these statistics are undeniably startling, and they indicate that the phenomenon of cellular phone usage while driving in the United States is ubiquitous. In order to sharply limit the widespread phenomenon of cellular phone usage while driving, it is imperative that the United States government takes the requisite steps toward increasing public awareness of this issue and encouraging people to think twice before making the decision to use their cellular phones while driving. Public awareness campaigns can be created and funded to help encourage drivers to avoid texting and driving. Additionally, drivers' education classes need to be particularly informative in regard to this issue. Studies such as a 2014 study from Southern Adventist University illustrated that, quote, driver safety education had a positive influence on the participants of the study in regard to driver perceptions of risks associated with distracted driving. By expanding the extent to which drivers' education classes zero in on this issue, this behavior can be significantly lessened. Finally, graduated driver's licensing programs need to replace the current system in many states whereby teenagers are able to acquire a full driver's license at the age of 16. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends, quote, a minimum age of 16 for a learner's permit, quote, a minimum age of 17 for an intermediate license, featuring restrictions on nighttime driving and limits on persons allowed in the car, and, quote, a minimum age of 18 for a full license. These recommendations will be affirmed here with an optional modification to allow 15-year-olds to obtain limited learner's permits to increase the amount of time that teenage drivers are under parental supervision, and to increase the restrictions for intermediate licenses to ensure safer driving habits. There should be certain exceptions that would allow 16 or 17-year-olds to drive unsupervised, such as if it were imperative for them to do so to work, given that the work is essential for the family while their family members are also at work, given that they pass a thorough driving test, but these exceptions should only be applied in somewhat extreme cases. Most importantly, more stringent legislation will need to be passed in order to rectify the problem of distracted driving. Police officers need to be better trained to detect if someone is distracted while driving. If an officer catches someone with their eyes off the road, or for that matter, talking on a cellular phone while driving, he should not hesitate to pull over the individual and fine them for their behavior. 39 states and Washington, D.C. presently have legislation which bans texting while driving, but the argument that will be made here is that all handheld cell phone use behind the wheel should be prohibited. 10 states currently have instituted a complete ban on this behavior in every single state, and hefty fines should be levied on those who choose to ignore this regulation. There are a number of common arguments against these proposals. 1. Some argue that they inhibit people's personal liberty and privacy by preventing them from making their own decisions concerning their safety. Some people that they will argue that they inhibit people's personal liberty is what it says, but let's just ignore that. 2. It is argued that increasing the age requirement for a full license to 18 is both a threat to personal liberty and would be ineffective and perhaps discriminatory. 3. Many claim that police officers could erroneously pull over people who are not actually texting or talking on the phone while driving. Although each of these claims has its share of validity, there are plenty of critical issues with each of them, which will be discussed here. First claim. The aforementioned proposals inhibit people's personal liberty and privacy by preventing them from making their own decisions concerning their safety. Counterclaim. The government already infringes on personal liberty frequently. For instance, there are regulations which ban murder and assault. These regulations are designed to protect people from harm, as are the regulations that are being recommended here. Although it could be argued that distracted driving is different because it primarily affects the person who is distracted and thus that they should be free to make their own decisions, the truth is that oftentimes the victims of distracted driving are those who were not distracted and in many cases did essentially everything they could have done to avoid a collision. Thus, it only makes sense that the government institute legislation and fund projects which seek to limit the omnipresence of this issue. Second counterclaim. Second claim. Increasing the age requirement for a full license to 18 is both a threat to personal liberty and would be ineffective and perhaps discriminatory. Counterclaim. There are a number of reasons that this would likely prove effective. First, by ensuring that teenagers have additional time, up to 3 years, under the supervision of their parents, destructive habits such as cellular phone usage while driving are less likely to develop. And increasing the age restriction in order to receive a full license to 18 years of age is important because it will lessen the number of fatal accidents. There have also been a number of neurological studies indicating that the brain is not fully developed until a human being is in his mid-20s. And although it would be ludicrous to restrict people from being able to drive until their mid-20s, as many young adults go to college and work, it makes sense to increase the age required for a full license to an age at which the vast majority of young adults begin their, quote, adult lives. And as I say below, the image that I have of no driving under 18 is a little misleading. The argument is that the age to receive a full permit should be 18, but the driver should be able to join a graduated system at the age of 15 or 16, in my system depending on the state, and slowly and consistently develop their skills. Third claim. Police officers could erroneously pull over people who were not actually texting or talking on the phone while driving. Counterclaim. It is certainly true that under many circumstances, police officers could erroneously charge someone for texting while driving. However, if officers underwent more extensive training, they could learn to more accurately detect texting and talking on the phone while driving. Other behaviors, such as eating and drinking while driving, could also be ticketed, although officers would not be required to ticket these behaviors, especially if they deem them to not be interfering all too much with the driver's ability to concentrate. Conclusion. To conclude, the United States needs to take the requisite efforts to limit the public welfare crisis of distracted driving. Through the implementation of public awareness programs and the implementation of regulations designed to eliminate this threat, as well as via thorough training of police officers to detect this behavior, the United States can lead the way for other nations worldwide to rid the world of thousands upon thousands of preventable deaths, such as distracted driving, each year. Note, all in-text citations link to the information provided here. This is the works cited page. Thank you for listening to my presentation. That was longer than 4 minutes. I hope that is okay.